Hi, I'm Daniel Nyman, and on behalf of the Forum for Healthcare Strategists, as well as our colleagues at BVK, welcome and thank you for joining us for Marketing AI That Works and What's Coming Next. Marketing is being rewritten in real time, and artificial intelligence is holding the pen. What began as experimentation is now delivering real ROI, reshaping strategies, and giving marketing teams unprecedented capabilities. As the pace of change accelerates, we're not just witnessing the future of marketing, we're helping shape it. In today's webinar, you'll hear from four leaders in healthcare marketing and digital strategy. They'll help us separate the promise from the hype, highlight what's delivering results today, and offer insight into what's around the corner. Whether you're already using AI tools or just beginning to explore the possibilities, this conversation will help you navigate the now and prepare for what's next. One note before we begin. If you would like to ask a question, please enter it into the question and answer pane located on the bottom of your screen at any time. Our panelists will respond to as many questions as they can in the time that we have. With that, I'll turn the program over to Danny Fell, Senior Vice President Health at BVK, who will be leading today's discussion. Danny?
Thanks, Daniel. And we really appreciate the partnership with the forum to be able to sponsor this webinar. Good afternoon to everyone joining, or maybe I should say good day. That's because we have over 240 registered for this webinar, either watching it live right now or maybe on replay. And it represents folks from 6 different countries as well. So wherever you are in the world, thanks for joining. We'd love to hear more from you in the Q&A or after the webinar, and we'll show you a way to do that. I'm Danny Fell, one of the vice presidents on the healthcare team of BVK. BVK is an Ad Age Top 50 independent agency doing marketing work in a variety of industries, from healthcare to higher education to travel and tourism. And it's my pleasure to be able to host the session today. Let's start with a quick overview of what we'll talk about. We're going to start with some introductions of the panel. We're going to take a look at where the AI is in the industry today and what the panel's perspectives are on healthcare and AI in particular and marketing applications. We'll dive into some specific AI applications that are being used in marketing and talk about where we're seeing early successes, whether it's marketing results or saving time and efficiency in the marketing process. We'll spend a little time getting started, so don't worry if you're just beginning to implement AI across your marketing tech stack or your organization. We'll have some thoughts about that. And we'll ask for the panel's thoughts about what's next and what they're excited about from a new technology or a new application. And time permitting, I've asked each of them to come with at least one recommendation on an AI learning resource that they'll share at the very end before we go to Q&A. And we'll also be compiling that and even more resources for you after the webinar and sending that out. And there'll be 20 or 30 curated marketing resources for learning more about AI and applying AI in your marketing efforts. So with that, let me turn it over to the panel. And I'm going to start, Deb, with you. Maybe you can tell the group a little bit about yourself and your work.
Sure. Thanks, Danny, and good day, everyone. I'm Deb Pappas. I'm the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at Connecticut Children's, where I've been for the last 7+ years, responsible for leading our strategy for brand, marketing and communications in support of our growth. I've spent the last 16 years in healthcare with positions at Boston Children's Hospital for 6+ years, and then prior to that at UMass Memorial Health. Before I began my healthcare journey, I was spent a good deal of time in different industries. So a lot in the technology sector, financial services and retail, and then rounded that out with agency experience. So I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
And you're definitely on brand. Good to have you at the
And this was not intentional, I swear.
I love it. Matt, I'm going to turn it to you next.
Great. Thanks, Danny. And thanks, everyone, for joining us today. We're excited to be here. And we have just a wonderful panel of great folks here. My name is Matt Sear, and I'm the founder of Loop Consulting, which is a marketing-focused AI consultancy for healthcare, higher education, and agencies. My career began way back in the day at Boston Children's Hospital. Second time you've heard that. Deb and I actually used to be colleagues at Boston Children's back in the day. So I spent a long time at hospitals in Boston, leading digital teams and content marketing and social media, and then transitioned over into working in healthcare, worked at Northeastern University and Clark University in Massachusetts. And then in 2016, made the jump to agencies and was responsible for leading our strategic practices and business development teams, primarily, again, focused on healthcare, higher education, and financial services. And then last year, decided that it was a great time to start my own business, and have had a great time learning all about the many ways that AI can help healthcare marketers and beyond. So thrilled to be here with you today. Thanks.
And you're down here in the Southeast with me, or near me, Matt. Good to have
Yes.
you on the
Yep.
panel.
Yeah. Based in Charleston, although right now in beautiful downtown Pittsburgh.
Thanks for joining us. I know you're doing a workshop there. Carrie, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, good day, everyone. And it's great to be here with this whole panel. And I'm really excited to be talking about one of my favorite topics, AI and marketing and technology. So I am Carrie Liken. I am currently on the healthcare team at Snowflake. And prior to Snowflake, I spent 8 years at Google, where I was basically helping organizations, especially in healthcare, on their AdWords strategies. But I was talking to organizations about the patient journey and how that was changing so significantly over the years, and how the digital patient journey was evolving quite rapidly. Then I moved over to Yext, where I was the head of industry for healthcare for 8 years, and I helped to grow the healthcare business specifically for the providers and some payers, but I was leading product strategy and go-to-market there. And then I have now joined Snowflake, and Snowflake is basically a data cloud. It enables organizations to mobilize data and helps that data to basically be discoverable, to be shared, and then on top of it to allow for AI and ML workloads to be written and delivered on top of that. And I used to say at Yext all of the time, you can't have an AI strategy without a data strategy. And so what I am doing now is a natural progression of what I did at Google to Yext to now Snowflake. And so I'm excited to talk not necessarily about Snowflake today, but especially about AI and all of the changes that are happening.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Carrie. And given how important search is in healthcare, we're going to talk a little bit about some of your experience and thoughts around how that field's emerging using AI in particular. So I want to make sure that we hit on that. Before we jump in, we're going to take a look at a survey that Deb, you put up on LinkedIn right before we did this webinar. And you were just looking for some feedback on where folks are in the industry with regards to AI. And even though this is a modest N, I think it is one, real-time data, which is great. And two, I think it feels representative of where marketers are today. Do you want to comment on this before we jump into the main discussion?
Yeah, sure, Danny. And yes, it's certainly unscientific, but it was really meant to just get a pulse, right? Because I think oftentimes we marketers and leaders can be hard on ourselves thinking, oh, we're so far behind, right? Even if we're well on our way or at different stages of, piloting or full deployment. And I think this shows really how dispersed, at least those 65 healthcare marketers that responded are. And it's encouraging, right? Because there is a lot of active use, and then those who have already really, fully scaled or transformed the department. So, and I think Matt had some different perspectives too, based on his industry conversations.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting to see these results, Deb. I think, as I've done surveys over the last year of healthcare marketing teams, I've noticed a definite shift in leaning much more into the last two here, scaling and integrating and transforming your work. A year ago, you would not have seen really anybody answering in the affirmative to either one of those. It was really about early learning and exploring and active piloting. So great to see people embracing the opportunities and the potential here, and great to see it reflected in your survey.
Carrie, any thoughts before we jump in?
Let's just jump in.
All right, great. So this is a slide light presentation, meaning we're actually not going to bombard you all with a lot of slides. We're going to go to a gallery view. We're going to talk about some topics that I covered in the agenda, and then we'll come back for some closing comments around the Q&A especially. So I'm going to lead off around the AI environment with you, Carrie. And I want to draw a parallel. There are a lot of news articles, headlines that are comparing it to sort of the early internet days, when the World Wide Web was coming out and where we were back in the early 90s. And I just want to make a quick point here. It turns out that Sam Altman was 9 years old when Netscape, the popular web browser, was launched in 1994. So I instantly feel like I know more than he does. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you see where we are with AI today broadly.
Yeah, that's really funny. I had no idea that Sam Altman was only 9 years old at the time. That makes me feel old. So there are, I think, some really significant parallels between that dot-com boom in the early 2000s, especially, and now. I think most of all, I think I come at this from a consumer perspective. And so I think about what was happening with people being able to actually access information. We went from a mode of I have to physically go to, for example, a library, or I have to go and get information from a physical entity before the dot-com boom happened. I had to transact in a way that was very manual. Dot-com boom happens, there's a lot of frenzy, there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of investment funding, there's a lot going on that is enabling people to get things faster, get information faster, explore different ways of just understanding our world. We had things like, I go back to Google and Lycos and Excite, and we had all these different search engines that were allowing us to get information, and then it just honed in on Google became the clear winner. What's happening now is very similar, where AI and companies that are around AI, there's that same fervor, and there's that change that's happening with the consumer yet again. So we're able to get easier information, produce information more easily as well, leverage this technology in a way that is changing our behaviors forever. And so just like I think about this with respect to the fax machine, healthcare is probably the only industry that still keeps fax machine companies in business. But let's say once email became a thing, fax machines were tossed out the window, except in healthcare. Same thing now is happening with AI, where now the traditional methods that we have known for 20 plus years, browsers, search, how we're putting information together, how we're researching even, that's changing again. So we're at this critical moment in time that was just like it was in the early 2000s, where we are changing, society is changing, behaviors are changing, companies are changing, the way we do work is changing, and I don't think we're ever going to go back. I don't know what the other members of the panel think about this, but I do think that there are some great parallels, but we're now moving further and faster.
Yeah, well, let's find out. And I should have prefaced it by saying, I know none of you lived through the early internet days, but I just thought that was a good jumping off point for us. Deb, let me turn to you. What do you feel like are some of the similarities or differences from that technology boom to this technology boom?
Yeah, a couple of the similarities, certainly the level of transformation and the change management, similar to what Carrie had noted, as well as the fact that in AI, there's a lot of talk about knowledge workers and the impact, right? It affects all levels, both did, right? In terms of whether you're entry level or you're senior executive trying to navigate the future of your organization. So I think that is very similar. And then equally, no surprise, Google's in the center of both, right? They were the early and now the kind of long-term winner from the standpoint of early internet search and still search. And now obviously they are a major player in all things AI. So that's interesting, but not surprising. And then a couple of differences, perhaps to me at least, and maybe it's because I can't remember as well, but it just seems that the rate of change and the pace that everything is happening is just so much more accelerated with AI than it was with the dot-com boom. And even having been in some of those dot-com companies, I just don't remember this level of change. And I think the last thing would be, I also don't remember as much of the fear factor then. Yes, it was uncharted territories, but the notion of having, bad actors or misuse of AI or, hallucinations and all the things that can go sideways, I just don't recall that, but it may just be that I don't remember, and pushing that out of my memory.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are a lot of similarities in terms of the fears and concerns that were raised in the early days, but it does feel different. Matt, I meant to bring my pets.com puppet. I actually have one still in the box. I think I can sell it on eBay. So does this feel like a pets.com moment to you, or is it different? And how does it feel different or similar to you?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it feels a little bit of each. I mean, I think to Deb's point a moment ago, the pace of the change to me feels very accelerated. I think we're asking marketers to take on lots of new capabilities, technologies, skills, everything all at once. And it's happening. You think back even just where we were 6 months or a year ago in the world of AI, things have accelerated so quickly. And Deb touched on this at the beginning. You feel like you're sort of endlessly behind. I think the good news is that everybody probably feels behind because of this pace. And I would just encourage people to keep trying and learning. And that really is a big step towards really staying involved and understanding how this could benefit you. The similarity to me, and actually I go back, Deb and I actually were working together at Boston Children's when social media tools really became popular. And I remember Facebook, when it was launched, it caused marketers to, I think, have a lot of panic attacks because for the first time, you were having customers have the ability to go out on social media and share their experiences without any filter, right? Without any barrier between you and that opinion. Whereas marketers and communicators were used to being able to control the narrative and all of that. And I think it caused us to have to shift our way of thinking and acting as marketers and communicators and embrace that in a new way. And the similarities to me today, we've talked about search engine optimization. We've gone from having search engines, right, our experiences and relationship with Google, to having answer engines, right, where the consumer can experience the answer to their question without ever having to leave Perplexity or ChatGPT. And that's a fundamental difference that I think marketers have to start accounting for and thinking about as they start to develop strategy and tactics.
Yeah, great input. Let me flip the question around a little bit and ask, why do marketers, and we'll say healthcare marketers in particular, but all marketers, why do they need to be leaning into AI right now, in your opinion? And I'll let Matt, you can start, and then we'll go around.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think we are at this moment where, yes, even though the pace is very rapid, we're still in this moment where I think people can not only catch up but really leapfrog. And there's certainly an opportunity to transform the way your marketing department runs, how you connect with your potential customers, and how you keep value for those customers over a lifetime. I think, though, that we are kind of rapidly approaching a place where if you haven't begun to really understand how these technologies work and utilize them and try them out, and one of the things I hope Deb will talk about here is the way that she and the Connecticut Children's team have been trying and learning on the job. That kind of learning is so important. And so I would encourage everyone to, as you said, to lean in, to learn, to try, and not expect that you've got to get everything right all at once, because it's impossible to get all of this right at once. And so, again, test, learn, iterate is a great, I think, piece of advice that people can follow.
That's a great point you just made. One of the questions that was submitted prior to the webinar was about that very question of how do you communicate that we're going to fail on some things or things won't work. And that's part of the process. So good point. We can come back to that. Deb or Carrie, either of you want to weigh in on that question of why marketers should lean in right now?
One other quick point, I say ditto to everything that Matt said, and additionally underscore the educational aspects that you need to just own it and drive it, because I think most organizations do not have a robust AI academy or training or education or anything that looks like that. So you really need to jump in and start figuring it out, because as Matt said, we're kind of all in this similar zone. And if you don't now, I think it'll be much tougher to catch up later. And to be able to really learn from those, quick wins or fast fails. We talk about failing fast all the time. So you need to be able to do those tests and continue to test and learn.
Yeah, great point.
I agree with that. I look at it in 3 buckets. So I would say the first bucket is we all need to be really on top of what the consumer changes are taking place, what's actually happening with behaviors. Because if you're marketing to consumers and to patients, how are they going to receive what you're trying to market? Because they're doing things differently and they're acting differently. So you have to understand how they're leveraging AI. what they're doing differently and how they're integrating it into their world, because that means that then you need to integrate into that. And I can get to that, and I've written Substacks about this as well. The second is the marketer. So the marketer and how the strategy is executed. AI can be now leveraged in that way, and maybe we'll talk about this later, but just in my exposure to data in my new role, understanding how you can tap into so much more data and then being able to layer the AI on top of it to develop a strategy that can help you pinpoint with precision how to market. We weren't able to do that before AI really came to being. So that's something that now the really sophisticated marketers are starting to test. And what Deb said, you have to test. And what Matt said, you have to test. You have to see if you can succeed or fail. But then the third is team. So Deb mentioned this before, but teams are changing. So how does the team think of, how do you as a leader think about your team and how the team needs to change? Maybe you don't have social media marketing managers as titles anymore. Maybe you don't have SEO leaders anymore. Maybe you have people who are focused on GEO, or maybe you have people who are focused on discovery differently when it comes to online. But then also your team may not even include digital marketing team members anymore, because it's not digital marketing as much as it's just marketing and how do you think about it. So there are ways to think about the team, there are ways to think about marketing, and then there are ways to think about the consumer. And if you think about it in those three ways, AI has to at least be part of that, and you have to master how those different users are leveraging that.
Yeah, great perspective. So before we move off that, I'll share one quote. This is from Kevin Kelly. He is one of the co-founders of Wired Magazine, and I love this quote. He said, "This is the most rehearsed technology ever." And what he meant by that was, if you think about how much we've talked about AI type technology in books and movies and television shows for almost a century, the humans have been thinking about this and thinking about how to apply some of this. So I think it's an interesting perspective to share. Let's turn now to some actual practical applications. Where is it being used in marketing? Where is it being used in healthcare marketing? Matt, I'm going to start with you. But before I do that, I'm going to share just a quick takeaway from the Adobe 2025 AI and Digital Trends Report, which came out earlier this year. So this is a global survey of marketing companies, brands, agencies, leaders, as well as there's a consumer component about it. I posted this morning on LinkedIn about this survey. But two interesting takeaways, Matt. One was that they asked for the primary drivers of growth in marketing today, and the number one response was leveraging AI and predictive analytics. I thought that was really interesting. And then when they asked about the top 3 Gen AI marketing applications, they were being used right now. They were chat and customer support, analyzing data and customer interactions, and the third was generating ideas and creative concepts. So that idea of content creation or brainstorming, or however you want to think about it. So interesting takeaway, Matt. Where are we seeing some actual applications today?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the earliest starting points for a lot of people, I think, and it makes a lot of sense, are in the content operations, right? You're seeing a lot of teams trying to figure out ways to meet the content demand, to maintain brand quality and consistency across that content. And I think we all know just in general that a lot of these LLMs are just very good at helping with content and the way we think about how we communicate with people. So that's sort of an early and obvious one. And I think one of the interesting things I think we're going to really start to see, though, is the push into the rest of the parts of creative. You mentioned Adobe. I was just on a call earlier this week with the Adobe team, learning more about their creative capabilities within their technologies from an AI perspective, and the generative capabilities in those technologies. Certainly, they're around text, they're around image, they're increasingly around video, including human avatars. So I think what you're starting to see is a consolidation of capability in some of these technologies, that if you are a marketing shop, a creative shop, you're beginning to lean into a smaller number of technologies that maybe you already have confidence in, and you can get much more capability from those in the near term, which is great. And I will say for Adobe in particular, they've done an amazing job of making sure that their information is not trained on other people's data, that it is not copyright protected. And for healthcare marketers in particular, right, there's always the concern about data privacy and copyright risk. And so Adobe's done a really nice job in that area to help ease people's concerns.
Yeah. And then what about agents? I just spoke a couple of weeks ago at the Healthcare Contact Center conference, which was all about agents. Matt, I think you joked that I might get thrown out before I got through my presentation. But the reality is, agentic AI and agents and the virtual bots are going to play a huge role in that contact center, referral center operation. Just simply thinking about being able to reach out to the number of patients for follow-up calls that hospitals can't do today, or healthcare organizations can't do today, because we just don't have the capacity to do that kind of thing. Carrie, you were getting into a recent topic around search and voice search in your Substack newsletter. See what I did there? And I thought maybe you could share some thoughts around that, but in general, any place that it's being used in marketing, but maybe start with that.
Yes, I was actually going to talk a little bit about that because I feel like that's the only perspective I have. So I really do believe that, again, if we take those three buckets and we think about the consumer bucket, the consumer is wildly different in how they're interacting with technology today. And we've gone from speaking the language of search and hunting through blue links to find information to the generative AI and the conversational AI interface that allows somebody to get the information that they need without having to do a lot of work. So the friction is gone. And so I feel like marketing teams have been grappling, and I've talked to a number of organizations where they don't know what to do with their content. They have all of this content, and they've been traditionally placing it on the website because that was the place where it needed to live. But now that there's this whole concept of summarization and generative AI and the conversation that you can have back and forth with Google and ChatGPT, that content isn't necessary on the website anymore. And now even with voice technology and that type of interface where we can interact with our voice and not even have to type, how are people going to discover information anyway?
And you
They're
did
just
kind
going
of
to
a cool
hear.
demo on your newsletter.
Yeah,
Using
AI
it to
mode now has search mode it's in voice. So now you have this opportunity to have an interaction with content. And so what I'm seeing is you have to structure now, marketing teams need to think about how to structure getting that content out to two different groups. One is you have to get the content out to the people who are consuming it, but think about it in a very different way. It's not necessarily through the website as the endpoint as we know it today. But then, Danny, you were talking about this before. The agents, the machines have to consume the content as well. And how do you make sure to get that information out there? Because there will be a future where the machines will be doing the research and then ultimately at the end of the day, maybe if we get there, booking the appointment on behalf of the patient. So I think there's a big grappling that marketing teams have right now with how do I change my strategy to respond to these consumer changes? And then on top of it, the consumers are changing because technology platforms have changed. So how do we readjust our strategy to make that a reality? And that's where we have a lot of tension right now.
Yeah, and I think Google just introduced their agent-to-agent open protocol, Carrie, which in the future we'll see agents talking
This
to
agent
agents.
will talk to this agent, and there will be no human involved at all. The agents will talk to the machines will talk to the machines.
Don't worry, Matt. We will keep the human in the loop. Deb, let me
Well
come
done.
to
Well
you.
played.
Thoughts about where we're seeing marketing actually deploy AI today, things that are working, things that maybe are experimental. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in response to both what Carrie and Matt shared, so at the intersection of all of that, we have already seen the impact of what Carrie's describing on our organic search traffic, right? But by the same token, we're seeing incredible growth in our AI overviews through the great work that our team has been doing. But that said, this is causing us to completely revisit our strategy moving forward around web, SEM, SEO, et cetera. But not only that, The good news is that our team is working in close partnership with IT and our clinical operations to completely optimize our online scheduling. So we currently have it available in 12 specialties, but before we scaled it out further, we knew that that kind of experience, if you will, the decision tree was not optimal because we saw the huge starting point and then a big, drop off of conversion. So when we get that right, that sets us up better for what Carrie's describing, because I am excited about a future of having an AI agent, but not until we're ready to be able to, benefit from that. Because right now, I don't think most would be in a good place to be able to have that agent book an appointment online without any kind of friction, if you will. So I think there's a lot of areas where, and you're right, I think in the stats from the Adobe research, absolutely some of our initial use cases are centered around content related things, but not just that. Extensive use around marketing and communications planning, competitive analysis, kind of summarizing key learnings from dense, whether it's research publications or clinical documents, et cetera. But then I think on the flip side, where we've done a test that has, was one of those fail fast, was really part of our brand campaign last year. So this was a year ago. So kind of an AI time, like an antiquity ago. But we did a pilot to test the use of an AI-powered content distribution and content intelligence platform in terms of native content to see if we would gain better results. Well, guess what? We did not, because the insights and the optimizations that delivered were no different or better than our traditional way of measuring engagement. So again, it was a great test, and maybe that also has evolved in a year or will continue to evolve. But I think it's being able to make those strategic investments and to be able to do the testing to help inform where do you have those gains that can really deliver value back to your marketing and communications efforts as well as your organization.
Yeah, I was thinking in particular around things like persona building on the fly, or developing deeper segmentation above and beyond maybe sort of standard stuff we've used in the past. Any other things come to mind from the panel around marketing applications right now? And then we'll move into some getting started stuff.
I got one more I would add, Danny, which is, and it's, I think, probably related a little bit to the personas, which is using some of the deep research tools to help you get a foothold and a starting point in strategy. For those who have not used these tools, OpenAI has, ChatGPT has deep research, Google Gemini has deep research, Perplexity has deep research, and because he's Elon Musk, Grok has deeper research. But these tools are really an incredibly powerful way to aggregate information at scale in ways that can help marketers really get started on understanding their markets, understanding untapped opportunities. A number of us were together at HMPS in April, and one of the questions that came up during one of our panels was around a challenge in finding or figuring out how to communicate with people who live in the villages, which is like a over 60 community in Florida. And that's the perfect use case for these deep research tools, which is really helping understand the demographics, the drivers of behavior. Do they live in Florida half the year, in New York the other half of the year? So I would just encourage people to give those tools a try. And I think you'll be really pleased with how they offer you a great starting point.
Yeah, let's continue on that theme of getting started. And Deb, I'll come to you. An idea that I've been looking at is, which I think is a cool concept, are these promptathon sprints, where you get a small team together to develop some prompts to try to solve a particular problem or a challenge or something like that. And while you can do that individually, having that team work on that together is really more productive than just sort of individually playing with some of these. But what are some other ways that folks can get started if they're still early in adopting or learning about some of the AI technologies?
Sure, and I love the promptathon idea. It's a great one. So I'll share our journey. And again, this is what worked for us to really start to more formally, embark on our journey. But I would encourage anyone who's still in those stages of earlier use or testing to, pick an area that's, enables you to focus and hit a key pain point or a key opportunity that you can measure kind of before and after, and then just go at it, right? So what we did is we had a department full-day retreat last December. It was 100% focused on AI. But before we went into that, we wanted to kind of give a little bit of a baseline for everyone, because we were all at different places in terms of either our knowledge or understanding or our use of AI tools. So some of the pre-work were things like everyone attending the Intro to Marketing AI that the Marketing AI Institute offers. I'm a huge fan of theirs. They have tremendous free resources. So that was part of the pre-work, along with a couple of articles as pre-reads. And then we had a core group of our team that worked in advance to really create a robust starting point of a list of potential use cases, along with a scoring mechanism, scoring by both value and by ability. So value meaning, rating it on a scale of it's going to deliver, lower or higher value as it relates to whether it's time or cost savings or efficiency and the like. And then the ability scale, is this a light lift, or is this really, complex and reliant upon a host of other departments? And at the end of the day, we can't control the actual kind of move forward of it. So we organized that worksheet by 6 different categories. Those categories were planning, production, personalization, promotion, performance, and then administrative. So we took that into the retreat. And then the team, we had breakout groups. So everyone was able to really use that as a starting point and then brainstorm and add beyond what we started with in terms of use case opportunities, and then actually did the scoring work, so that when we came back together in the second part of the day, it was kind of that mashup of all the opportunities, but what came up on the leaderboard in terms of those primary opportunities that scored most, high. And then we really went through those and shortlisted them down to a starter set of 4 areas that we identified for our pilot. And then we move forward with the pilots. And really, we're doing a lot of side-by-side testing of tools on those same kind of use cases. And to your point, Dean, I guess I can think of a couple of points where I guess technically we were probably doing a prompt-a-thon, because we were literally, as we were doing those side-by-side tests, looking at how we needed to refine, really what we were asking ChatGPT or fill in the blank to do for us in terms of those questions. So from there, we then did an assessment phase in terms of looking at what we had learned, what had worked, what hadn't, zeroed in on our preferred tool. And then most importantly, like last month, we then, in partnership with IT and information security, we moved forward with that selection. And I want to underscore that because, again, we are in healthcare, right? So we didn't go rogue. It's very easy to do that, right? Or just do what you want to do in your own, house, so to speak. But we do have an enterprise AI policy, and we have a core group that works on all things kind of AI across the organization. And so we worked through that process to make sure that it was vetted, and that before we went live, that our, we had already opted out for, we ended up starting with ChatGPT, and that we've opted out of it training on our data. And that was really one of the primary concerns of our information security leader, among other things that he had vetted alongside of us. So we are now kind of on our other side of getting it more fully scaled across the work, and the team's been doing a great job of really integrating it into their daily work. And now it's more about how do we truly scale and bake it into our operations and expand the use cases, if you will, in terms of how we are leveraging it and how we continue to learn.
Yeah, I love that process. And you made a great point. Many health systems are implementing AI governance committees or oversight boards that work across clinical and operational and marketing and HR and customer experience. Those are really important places to coalesce and prioritize initiatives across the organization. Matt or Carrie, before we leave this topic, any other kind of getting started advice or things that you'd recommend to the folks on the call?
I've got one. Carrie, jump in. Go for it. No, go ahead.
So I'll go with the consumer side again. One thing that I'm constantly telling organizations is know what the consumer is doing and know how you show up when the consumer is looking for you. So appoint someone on your team to be the person who not only understands the technologies and can educate the team on the technologies. So that's the point person who understands how ChatGPT works, how Gemini works, how literally any of the tools, especially the tools that you have approved to use in your organization. Know how those work and really dive deeply, but then also understand what the consumer is doing and how the consumer is seeing you. So look at it on a monthly basis, see if things have changed. AI overviews in Google is a really big focus for a lot of organizations because it's fundamentally changed how information about your organization is or is not showing. So did you show up this month? Did you not show up this month? Did you make changes this month because you weren't showing up and now you are showing up? Those types of things, make sure you have somebody who is always looking at that. The other thing I would say, and I love the promptathon idea, I would say take a look at in your own role, where do you repeat yourself over and over and over again? Because that is where you can personally take advantage of AI. So are you repeating yourself by writing copy? Are you repeating yourself by making task lists? Are you repeating yourself by creating content on a regular basis? Whatever that might be. These are things to start thinking about. How can I apply AI to that process? Because then you can get rid of that repetition. And then the other thing is, once you do that, put it into your calendar with the prompt so that you always know that when you're doing something at this time, you just go to the calendar invite, it has the prompt, you just go ahead and insert that prompt into ChatGPT or whatever tool you're using, or create a gem in Gemini, or create a project in ChatGPT, whatever that might be. So there's know the consumer and then know your own behavior.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Matt, you had some input.
Yeah, and actually, this will be a little bit of a twofer because we just had a question come in through the chat from anonymous attendee asking about using AI for research, and these are connected. I use AI to support to help me with research all the time. Whenever I work with a client, in fact, just a few weeks ago, I was up in Portland, Maine, working with the Maine Health team. Did an in-person workshop with them on AI use and adoption. And before I do any one of these workshops, including the one that I'm here at now, I send out a survey in advance to hear from all of the team members where they are in their AI attitudes, adoption, usage, just so that when I go in the room, I can have an understanding of where people are. Danny, you referenced, keeping the human in the loop. The reason my company is named Loop is because I believe that AI can benefit humanity, but only if humans are in the loop. And I think part of what we lose track of sometimes is that AI, well, it's about technology, it's ultimately really about humanity. And when I do these surveys, I find inevitably that people are expressing anxiety, worry, excitement, trepidation, all of these very human emotions. And I don't think we give enough oxygen to those things when we start having conversations with our teams. And so, speaking specifically about the Maine Health opportunity or the Maine Health workshop, there were comments in the survey saying, I feel like AI is a speeding train and I can't get out of the way. I feel like this is happening to me and there's nothing that I can do about it and I feel powerless. And that's the opposite of what we want here. We want the human to feel engaged and to feel heard. And so to sort of triangulate all of this, I do use AI to help me evaluate my survey results and to identify opportunities where there might be some anxiety or reticence that we need to talk about in the room so that folks can feel empowered to say that, this isn't just all positive and happy. There are parts of this that we don't feel comfortable with, and we need to talk about those before we can move forward. So, it's an even earlier starting point than some of the great points that both Deb and Carrie have just made. And just, again, don't want to lose track of the human side of this.
Yeah, and I think you guys hit it at the beginning. It is uniquely different from maybe what we went through with some of the web and internet. At least it feels that way. Okay, let's move into the rapid answer portion of this so we can get to some questions and answers. And I'm glad that we're jumping in on some that are in the Q&A box. I'm going to start with you, Carrie, and we're going to talk about what's coming next or what you're excited about. Then we'll go around and have Matt and Deb answer. So, Carrie, what's on the horizon that you're excited about?
I mentioned it before, the agents. I'm really excited about the agents. So I don't know when healthcare will actually get to this point, but I've watched interviews with the CEO of Visa and with other, high-level individuals within other industries who are talking about how they're preparing for and partnering with. So they're preparing for the agents and they're partnering with ChatGPT, with OpenAI, and with other organizations to start to enable that full end-to-end experience. And it just makes me think healthcare is ripe for this. How frustrating is it to, let's say, book a dermatology appointment? You don't have availability for 15 months, and then you have to call. You can't necessarily book it online at many organizations. How amazing would it be to just tell an agent, hey, you have access to this information, you have access to my calendar, you have all the go ahead to go ahead and book something on my behalf. Let me know, put it on my calendar, and I'm good to go. I am so excited about that. I can't tell you how this will be game changing. Now, the question will be who will do it and who will allow for it in healthcare. I acknowledge that. But I think that's a really big thing that I can't wait to see what happens outside of healthcare so we can bring it into healthcare.
Yeah, so Carrie, I've had the same vision of a 24-hour health coach
Yeah.
that people can rely on, that just sort of checks in with you, mental health, physical health. Are you taking your prescriptions? There's
Yeah.
some interesting partnerships going on. A company called Drive Health has an agentic nurse. Arizona State University is actually going to credential that nurse, and they
Interesting.
could potentially get licensing as well. Deb, let me come to you. What are you excited about? What's on the horizon that you're seeing?
So it's probably less being excited about that, having huge questions around like what is the future around EHRs, and are they going to be able to transform in a way that we, from a marketing standpoint, need them to transform as it relates to AI, and to be able to enable Carrie's vision, which I am like, I am absolutely, if we could do that, I would do a happy dance, right? But I think seriously, it's about like, how do we improve, patient access? We talk about this all the time, patient experience, and the ability to not have to continue to have all these siloed MarTech apps and other things all cobbled together to try to achieve it. And I really am curious, like, who's going to step up and really do it in a transformational way that works, not just from a clinical perspective or a medical record perspective, but from a, again, kind of that full, full kind of whole person, whole child, experience perspective.
Yeah, great. Matt, what's your on the horizon?
Yeah, I've got two quick ones. One is actually directly tied to what Deb just mentioned. There's been in the last maybe month or two, there's been an emergence of something called Model Context Protocol, MCP. For those who follow this stuff closely, essentially it's just a very fancy way of saying that they are working on trying to find ways for these AI technologies to communicate with each other much more effectively, much more directly, in service of having much more streamlined and clear journeys for people, right? And we all know about the EMR challenges that Deb just outlined, right? You think about content management systems and CRMs and marketing automation solutions, and you think about, related to donations and all of the different systems, none of which seem to be able to talk to each other. The goal and the hope is that MCP or some version of it might finally sort of flatten the playing ground so that these experiences can become more streamlined. The other thing, and interestingly to me, this comes actually from the clinical side of healthcare, is the idea of ambient AI. If you've been to your primary care physician's office recently and have been in the exam room, your physician might have asked you if it's okay to use an AI recording device for that visit. These are becoming very common, and they are a way for the conversation to be uploaded immediately into the EMR, for takeaways and next steps and flags to be identified, and really taking the clinician out of the mix of having to transcribe everything. It really lets them focus on the clinical side of things. I would actually imagine that you'll start to see ambient AI applications coming in lots of other places, including in the marketing sphere, because I think it's just too easy to use voice as a way to really connect and help people solve the challenges that they're facing.
Yeah, I think that's a good one, Matt. Ambient AI is actually one of those proven AI applications in more the clinical setting, to your point, but also I think is going to be expanding to greater settings. That was wonderful. Okay, let's do one more rapid round. Your recommendation for an AI resource, and again, a reminder for those of you on the call, we're actually going to put together a curated list, much larger than just 4 or 5 ideas. We'll send that out after to everybody who registered, but let me start with Deb, what's a recommended AI learning resource?
The panelists, my colleagues on this, webinar, seriously, I think, follow them. They publish amazing thought leadership pieces and opinions and forecasts and such. So I think we can learn from all of them, in addition to the marketing research, Marketing AI Institute that I referenced earlier.
Yeah, and I was going to say we'll put the Institute link in the resources as well. Carrie, how about you?
I have two. One is the Hard Fork podcast. I love that podcast. I feel like it gives a very broad overview of what's going on with technology and especially AI right now in the moment. It doesn't go very deep, but at least gives exposure to things that are happening to keep you on top of things. I love those two guys who host the I laugh every Friday. The other is actually an old book that was written in 2018. And I have a draft of a Substack that I've written that draws parallels to it, but I haven't published it yet. And it's called AI Superpowers. And it compares China to Silicon Valley. And it's written by Kai-Fu Lee.
Kai-Fu Yang, yeah.
Yeah. And it is mind-blowing in so many ways because it talks about how AI is basically progressing in China and how AI is progressing in the United States and how there is going to be a race between the two. But there are massive parallels to what is being applied in China for healthcare and what we could look toward with respect to AI in healthcare if we could just think outside of the box. So it's an older book, but still really, really, really interesting.
Yeah, it is a good book. Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo what Deb said. Marketing AI Institute is amazing. They have a weekly podcast that is a must listen. They do a really wonderful job of taking all of the things that are happening and putting them in context and giving you sort of a historical perspective on why things are moving the way they are and what the trends are and everything like that. So just an absolute must listen. If you like to go deeper dive, I don't know if anybody ever listens to the Lex Friedman podcast, but Lex is the one person who can manage to get incredibly interesting, powerful people to sit down for 3 hours and talk with him. And you will get an opportunity to hear from the people that are shaping all of the field of AI at depth and really understand how they see the world and how that impacts the things that are being put in front of you every day. And then finally, shameless self-promotion. I do as Deb mentioned, a weekly LinkedIn e-newsletter where I sort of summarize the previous week's news, and would love to have folks connect there and hear what you're thinking about on your side. So thank you.
Yeah, both you and Carrie are doing great newsletters. I'll mention one real quick. It's called The Most Interesting Thing in AI. It's also a podcast. It's put out by the Atlantic magazine. And the very last one in this series is called AI Optimism. Great interview with Kevin Kelly from Wired. Quick shout out to the forum. They had Amber Mack speak a keynote at the Orlando conference. And I love this quote from her ending part of her presentation, that we should be looking at AI for purpose and not just for productivity. And I think that's a trap that a lot of folks are maybe falling into, is just looking at it as how can we be more efficient or save time or save people. But there's more to it than that. So with that, let's see if we can grab maybe a question or two from the audience, and we'll turn to a couple that we had submitted ahead of time. And feel free, guys, if you want to jump into the board on the webinar. But here's a question from somebody who registered. What should hospitals and healthcare marketers do to protect consumer trust in the age of AI? This issue of trust, I think, is huge. Thoughts that you guys have around that?
I'll jump in and I'm going to echo Matt, which is you have to have humans in the loop. And I'm not saying that just, for Matt's sake. It's so true, right? Because we know in our own brand research, trust is a huge component, and we actually do very well with parent family trust in us as a brand. And so the last thing we're going to do is want to kind of overstep in terms of use of AI that jeopardizes any of our expertise and the trust in what we put out there. So we are constantly continuing to still put front and center. It's our patient families, it's our pediatric specialists, all of our blogs. We have an amazing content strategist and writer who writes all of our content. And while we may look at AI in terms of does it help with packaging and formatting across multiple channels in terms of multimodal content, or, helping to edit for tone or voice or style, that's one thing, but we are not using AI to generate our content, full stop. So I think that's going to be critical because obviously, just like even with the deep research use, right? You have to fact check. You can't just take something verbatim and assume that it's accurate and you can just push it out, right? That puts you at tremendous risk. So I think that's at least one thing in terms of making sure that you're really thoughtful about how you're utilizing the technology.
Yeah,
I
great
can
point.
add to that really quickly too,
Sure.
from the content perspective. If you're using AI just to create content, it's what some people are now referring to as AI slop. And so it sounds the same, it feels the same, it looks the same. And the way to show, at least from what we're seeing on Google via AI overviews in AI mode, is that you have to have something that's unique, and you have to show your expertise, and you have to show something that sparkles in some ways. So that's a way to also build trust too, because you're featuring your individual experts and team members and perspective and POV that's not the slop. And it's really important to differentiate between the two.
Yeah, great point. We had a couple of questions about consumer research around how, to your point, Carrie, consumers are actually using AI for healthcare advice. And I'll just quote a recent YouGov poll. This was with 1,100 consumers nationwide. 24% of people who responded to the survey said that they had used AI to get health advice. Another 28% said they would consider using it. So interestingly, it was about the same for Gen Z as it was for those 65 and older. Combined, have used it or would consider using it. 65 and older, it was close to 50%. Any thoughts about research that's out there, or doing your own research around how consumers are using AI for health information and advice?
Yeah, check out my Substack. That's what I was. But in all seriousness, I mentioned this earlier. I think we're only going to see these numbers increase over time, because the ability to do the research off of a healthcare website in favor of doing it via the ChatGPTs and the AI overviews and the AI mode and the Geminis of the world, it's just easy. So if I wanted to look up something about a migraine, not only am I getting something from AI mode or from ChatGPT that describes what it is, it goes even further. So if you think about what's on the website, that's basically been transported off onto these other places where people are discovering it. And so there's a lot of research that's happening because it's the friction has gone away, and so it's a lot easier to get that information. And then what we need to think about is, if that's the case, then how do we make sure to get people back to the site so that there's a transaction that can happen? And I've been talking a lot about that. But I'm not surprised to hear that data. I'm not surprised to hear that it's a 25 to 30% utilization. We'll probably be talking about this 6 months from now, and it'll be over 50%, and we'll just keep going, because as long as people are trusting what they're getting and they're getting good information, they'll keep using it.
Great point. Sadly, we have to end there because we're at the top of the hour. There's so much more we could talk about. I'll try to get the band back together. We'll send out the resources to everyone after this. Feel free to keep submitting questions. We'll find some outlets to share thoughts from the panel for everybody. If you want to get in touch with us afterwards, There's a link to my email, my LinkedIn. I can get you in touch with Matt and Deb and Carrie. And Matt, Deb, Carrie, thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of the panel today. Great discussion. We're in the early days of implementing AI for marketing, and I look forward to hearing from you guys again. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Daniel. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Danny. I know the audience joins me in thanking you, Deb, Carrie, and Matt for that terrific discussion. And thank you to everyone in our audience for taking the time to join us today. Please note that if you asked a question that the speakers weren't able to get to, they'll do their best to get a response to you. And we'll also be sending out a link to the webinar recording, as well as some resources recommended by the panelists. So watch out for that within the next few days. And that concludes today's program. We hope to see you at future forum webinars, as well as the Healthcare Marketing and Physician Strategy Summit, May 4th to 6th, 2026 in Salt Lake City. Please visit the forum website at healthcarestrategy.com to learn more. Finally, be sure to give us your feedback by completing the evaluation survey as you exit the webinar. Thank you and have a great day.